Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marina Martins. I'm from Education USA Brazil. Today, this session is going to be on student visas by the Bureau of Consular Affairs from the U.S. Department of State. We are joined here today by Rebecca Wall. Thank you for being here. And also Jorge Reyes from Education USA Mexico.
Hello, everyone.
So we're just going to give it a minute so everyone can join us. I just wanted to remind everyone today that we have over 80 institutions participating in the fair. So make sure you get around to all of the booths. And if you can't get around to everything today, the event will be online the next 30 days. So you will be able to check the material at the booths later. We also have a photo booth that's going to be in the lobby. So take pictures, post it, tag us on social media. We also prepared a scavenger hunt to help you explore the fair and find new things. And so you can also download that in the lobby or at the Education USA booth. So Rebecca, I will start sharing my screen and you can start us off on our first presentation.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Rebecca Wall and I am a consular officer with the U.S. Department of State. And I just wanted to say I'm really excited to be here and I'm really excited that you're interested in studying in the United States. I studied abroad myself overseas when I was a student, and it was a really wonderful experience, but I also know that it can also be a daunting experience when it comes to the visa process. So hope I can answer a lot of the questions that you have today. And I know that there's a lot more questions that have come up in recent times because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So thank you all for joining, and I hope that this helps answer a lot of your questions. Next slide, please. So despite the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the United States is still the top global destination for students around the world. Students are valued members of our communities, our academic communities, our campuses, our communities, and we really benefit in the United States from the cooperation and the coordination that we get from bringing students here. Our cultural understanding of other countries, our research, the knowledge that we have here, and really helping to support U.S. diplomacy. Students, it's important to say, you're also an important part of the U.S. economy. You contributed more than $44 billion in 2019 and 2020. So international students have been and will continue to be among the Department of State's highest priorities. Next slide, please. So while visa adjudication around the world is consistent, some of the processes that you are going to see country to country are going to vary a little bit. And this is particularly the case because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we really stress that students need to check travel.state.gov and also the websites for your individual embassies and consulates to see what the situation is in your country. What the backlog or what the wait time might be in one country, in Colombia, might be very different than in another country, in Costa Rica or Brazil. So we really strongly recommend that you keep checking travel.state.gov, and we update that quite regularly, and also the websites for your individual countries and consulates where you might be applying. This also, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, sort of the processes for applying might also differ country to country. So please keep checking that website for updates. Next slide, please. So there's three different types of student visas. There's Fs, Ms, and Js. You don't really have to worry about this too much because your university will tell you which classification you should apply within. But just so you know that there are different types of visas out there, and you may not have the same type of visa as a friend of yours. Most students are Fs. These are academic students who are going to study in the United States. The J visas are for specific programs, usually for a more specific amount of time, and often for graduate studies, but not always the case. And then the M visas are for vocational students or other non-academic students. Next slide, please. So before your interview, there's a couple of things you need to make sure that you're doing before you come in and speak with the consular officer. You're going to want to complete your visa application online. You're going to pay your fee and schedule your appointment. I realize I'm going to start sounding a little bit like a broken record here when I say apply far in advance. But given the COVID-19 pandemic, applying in as far as advance as possible and being as prepared as possible is really going to make sure that you can get to your studies on time. I really can't emphasize that enough. Fs and Ms for the visas, they can be issued up to 120 days prior to your program start date. And J visas can be issued as soon as you have your DS 2019. So I would encourage you not to wait to apply. It's really important that you are on top of that and that you are making sure that you get everything done in advance. You can pay your fee at fmjfee.com. And one additional point that we're making sure that we emphasize is that your passport has to be valid for at least 6 months after you arrive in the United States. So just to make sure that your visa isn't held up in any way, check your passport expiration date and start to apply in advance if you do need a new passport. Next slide, please. So these are the only required documents you need to bring to your interview. You need your passport, you need your photo, you need your DS-160 confirmation page, either your I-20 or your DS 2019. That's going to vary depending on if you're a J or an F applicant or an M, but that will be issued to you from your school. So that will be a document that your school gives you, and the receipt for your application and your fee. You want to check that your particular embassy doesn't have any other things that they require. If they do, they will have it on their website. And you're welcome to bring whatever documents you want for the officer to review, but the officer likely may not look at other documents you have. We have a limited amount of time to talk to a lot of students, so we may not be able to go through everything that you bring to us. So bring the required documents, and if you think it would help, bring it, but don't be disappointed if you don't get asked to look at all the other documents. Next slide, please. So you'll go in, you'll do your interview, and I'll speak about that a little further in another slide about the interview itself, because I'm sure that's probably the most important thing you're all here for today. But after your interview, hopefully many of you will be issued a visa. Approximately 75% of F visa applicants and 92% of J visa applicants are issued. So more than the majority of our students who are coming to interview are issued a visa. This data is a little old, it's from 2019 to 2020, but the data for 2021 is very similar to this as well. So if your visa is refused, the most common category is refused under is called 214B. So if this happens to you, the officer should give you a piece of paper that explains that your visa was refused under 214B. And this indicates that the officer didn't believe that you were eligible for the visa because they thought that you had immigrant intent, that they thought that you were planning to immigrate to the United States. And I'll talk about this a little bit further on in my presentation. So another refusal you might be refused is 221G. And this really just means that you forgot something, or we need something additional for you. You probably forgot something, but that's okay. You're still refused, but you can bring in whatever it is you forgot or submit it in whatever the way that the post asks you, the embassy asks you to do that. You might have forgotten to get your form signed, or you may be bringing a spouse with you and the officer wants to see your marriage certificate. So the other kind of refusal you might get is administrative processing. And I'll speak about that in my next slide as well. So next slide, please. So with the other two refusals, unlike the other refusals where we ask for additional documents or ask you to take action, if you're refused for administrative processing, there's nothing really you need to do on your end. So each applicant is being evaluated but depending on the unique circumstances of their situation. So if you're in administrative processing, it just means that we need to do a little bit more processing on your application. You should be given a letter that says that this is the case. And this can last up to 60 days, but sometimes it goes a little bit longer. So we realize that can be frustrating. You come in and you're hoping for a visa. You might be told you're in administrative processing, but know that there's nothing more that you can do on your end. And we're continuing to process on our end. And once that's completed, we'll let you know. Next slide, please. So we get asked a lot, if I'm going to a university that's not Harvard, or if I'm going to a community college, or maybe a school that's less well known, does that increase the chance that my visa will be refused? And the answer is no. Consular officers are trained to assess each individual student based upon the circumstances of their application. It doesn't have to do with the school you're going to or where the school is located. Really what we want to know, this is the part about the interview, so this is, if you weren't listening the rest of the presentation, this is a really important part. What we really want to know is, do you have ties to your home country? And we're really trying to figure out, is your intention at this moment in time to return to your home country after you complete your studies? So we are going to ask you questions about that. And we want to know that your plan for study makes sense. So I know some folks are young and in college or university, and you don't have your whole life planned out, and you're not going to be able to tell me exactly what you want to do 10 years from now. But we want to know that your plan makes sense. If you tell me you want to study agriculture in Kansas because you've worked on a farm and you heard about this university from your cousin who also studied there, that makes sense. If I say, well, why did you decide to go to Kansas? And you don't know why, and you can't explain to me why you picked this university over another university, or why you want to study agriculture at all, I might begin to question your intentions and your plans for study. So be honest with the consular officer, answer their questions, and tell them your story. Tell them why you want to study in America, why you're studying what you're studying, and what you plan to do afterwards. So that's the interview. It's going to be pretty short. We don't have a lot of time to spend a lot of time with each applicant, but we want you to tell us the truth, and tell us why you're wanting to study in America. Because if you start to fabricate in that, then we're going to begin to wonder if you're lying about other things. So, and to that point, I do want to emphasize that visa fixers, they have no inside information about the visa process. And I just want to reiterate that. So please don't use visa fixers. They're going to tell you they know how to tell you how to get to America and what to say to the consular officer. If your story is true, and if you are a valid student who wants to study in America and return to your home country afterwards, then that's what you should be presenting to the consular officer. Next slide, please. So, as you're well aware, COVID-19 has had a huge impact on our processing of visas around the world. And we at the State Department have really tried to do everything we can to make sure that as many students as possible can get their visa, get their interviews, and get to their studies on time. Some countries do still have backlogs because of COVID-19, but where it's safe and where it is safe for the applicants and our employees, we are interviewing and we are scheduling appointments. Next slide, please. So this is a little less relevant for folks in the Western Hemisphere in your country, but some countries are impacted by regional proclamations due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I just ask again, please make sure that you check the website for the country where you're applying, the embassy in your country, to make sure that you don't have any particular restrictions related to your application. Next slide, please. Again, I'll just touch on this quickly. If you are in a country that is subject to a presidential proclamation, you will likely need a national interest exception to study in the United States. The good news is that FMs and academic J students are automatically granted a national interest exception. If you are an F or an M student, you don't even have to apply for this a national interest exception. It'll just be granted when your visa is issued. If you are a J visa applicant, it is a slightly different process. You will also be granted a national interest exception when you interview if your visa is approved. But if you already hold a J visa and you don't have a national interest exception yet, you will need to reach out to your embassy to request this. So again, if you're an F or an M and you already have a visa, you don't have to reach out to request a national interest exception. But if you are a J applicant who already has a visa, you will need to request that. But if you're a first-time applicant and you've never had a visa, then these will be managed by the consulate section where you're applying. Next slide, please. So something else that we've done for students because of COVID-19, because we know that the wait times could be a little bit longer because of social distancing rules and just sort of backlogs from not working in the consular section for many, many months during lockdowns. We have changed it so that if you were a student in the past and you were reapplying again, you could be eligible for visa for an interview waiver. So if you had a prior student visa in the same university or the same area of study in the past 48 months, you may be eligible. So if you think that you apply for that, you can look at your individual embassy or website. Next slide, please. So something else that we have changed is if you are an F student and you have an I-20, this is the form that your school is going to give you. We can now accept an electronic copy of that. So we don't need the hard copy that you get through the snail mail that comes on the ocean or the plane to get to you anymore. Email copy is fine. If you are a J student, your DS 2019, it still needs to go over the ocean in the airplane to get to you. It's just a slightly different process. So you will need to have your hard copy that is signed by the school official. But if you have an error on that and if something needs to be changed and updated, you can just have that changed done electronically and you don't need to go through the process of getting a new hard copy. Yes. So this is all new that we're accepting them an electronic printed out copy. And hopefully this will help you if there's any errors on it or if you need to change anything on your forms. Next slide, please. So the other thing that we have done, and this is becoming a little less relevant as we get closer to the deadline, because normally when you pay your fee for an interview, it's good for 1 year. So because of COVID, we extended the amount of time that your fee, when you were able to apply was valid. So it will be good if you apply now until September 30, 2022. So you get an extra month and 5 days. That may be extended, but it may not be. So keep an eye on that. Next slide, please. So I just want to really reiterate that even with the COVID-19 pandemic, and even though some places it might take a little bit longer for you to get an application, we really do appreciate everyone's interest and excitement about studying in the United States. It's a really great experience. We gain from you and you gain from us, and we really truly value international students and what you bring to the United States. And we really have tried to be flexible and make changes in our application process, in our policies to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, to make sure as many students as possible are able to come and start their programs on time. Next slide, please. So if you do have individual questions, I know I've said this a lot during the presentation, but please check the website for your individual embassy or consulate. That is really going to be the best source of information for you because they are the folks on the ground in your country who are updating that and letting you know what the individual situation is in the country where you are. You can also check travel.state.gov and see what the wait times are in your individual country for certain types of visa. If you just go to Google and type student visa wait times or travel.state.gov wait times, it will be the first thing that pops up. And that is a good thing to do while you're thinking about applying, just to get a sense of what the wait times might look like in your individual country. But I am so excited that I was able to kick off this conference today. I hope that you get a lot of fantastic information about all of the different opportunities you have, study in America, the cool, I mean, America's so big and there's so many different universities, so many different programs, and there's really something for everyone. And I hope that your student visa application process is as painless as possible, and that one day we'll see you here studying in the United States. So thank you for joining today.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, Rebecca. So we are hitting our over 778 students. Everyone, this is the end of our session. So make sure you check the calendar for the next sessions, visit the booths for the representatives for the universities, and thank you so much for being here today. Bye.
Thanks.